Wireless Lan Professionals Podcast, episode 155.
Wireless Lan Professionals is a place to educate, inform, encourage, and entertain those involved in wireless LANs. This Wireless Lan Professionals podcast is an audio manifestation of these goals. Our host is a wireless LAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher, Keith Parsons. And now, the podcast for Wireless Lan Professionals by Wireless Lan Professionals.
Hi, I'm with Curtis Larsen. Curtis is with the University of Utah. How are you doing, Curtis?
Doing great, Keith. How are you?
Great. I thought I'd talk to you today about something I heard you had done or working on is building a database of different RSSI measurements specifically for the medical devices you have in the hospital. Can we spend some time with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So first, what's your impetus for even starting this project?
So as we met with you and Devin, several months ago and tried to update some of our best practices regarding Wi-Fi design and Wi-Fi site survey, one of the things that we realized is so important is this concept of this least capable device. And so we came to the conclusion that, hey, in every building and every design that we do, we need to understand the least capable device. And we set about trying to define those. And in some cases deciding, well, hey, should this be building by building? Should we have a least capable device for the hospital and a different least capable device in our campus buildings and things like that? And, as we were kind of thinking through that, I noticed that we would get ticket after ticket after ticket where people are saying, hey, I have a new grundle of IoT devices. I have 100 barcode scanners, or I have 100 of these handheld wireless printers, or I have 100 Android devices, and I'm going to bring them on the network, and I want you to tell me, is the network going to be sufficient for them?
And this is the typical method where they buy them first and then ask.
Absolutely, every time. Yeah. So they buy them first, and then they say, we want to deploy them, but we want you to tell us that the network's going to be great. And so usually the way the conversation goes is, well, I have a Wi-Fi site survey that was done, X number of months ago, and here's the data from that site survey. But the problem is RSSI can differ from device to device, and I don't know what the capability of your device is. So I don't really know I don't know how close to the survey data that I'm giving you, your device would actually, how closely your experience would actually be. So it's kind of a chicken and egg.
So I'm guessing you did all your measurements like with Proxim 8494s. So that's your baseline? Or have you moved on to Sidekicks?
Well, we're just beginning this, but what we've decided is at the same time we've kind of seen the website with RSSIcompared.com, I think it is.
Yeah, that's Blake Croney's site, RSSIcompared.com.
Okay, yeah. So I've read through the test procedure there, and I thought, well, hey, I've got several different medical devices and other devices that I'd like to measure and upload to that site. And I thought, hey, if I'm going to do this, why don't we just do it for our whole hospital environment with all these medical devices and, a bunch of the campus devices and everything else. So yeah, what we intend to do is measure set up an AP, measure the Economic 300. We do have a Sidekick on order. It's not here yet, but and then measure, for example, WOW carts that we have in the hospital, measure infusion pumps, measure Vocera badges, RTLS tags, whatever device it is. And then the idea is that when somebody brings a new device onto the network and they ask us, how well will my device perform? We can take the existing site survey that we have from EcoHow, apply an offset for that device as soon as we measure it, and we can give them a accurate representation of what the Wi-Fi environment will look like from their device's perspective.
So an RSSI offset table for your own personal devices. I like that you'll test them all against the same test bed.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is extremely valuable about what Blake put together in RSSI Compared was, and this was shocking to me when I first found out, an iPhone is not an iPhone is not an iPhone. Even the same iPhone 7s, 7 Plus, and they're identical, and you put 10 of them down, aren't going to report the same thing. So part of what we need from your data set that you're, also thank you for uploading that to RSSI Compared, is what's the standard deviation within a device. A couple of years ago, I ran across a test that I was doing at a hospital where they had Vocera badges, and we were just prepping them to get it ready to go do a test. And 7 of them were laying out right next to each other on a cart. And we got them all ready, all showing RSSI. And you look down and go, wait, they're not the same.
Right.
And the shock on everyone's face was like, they're not, what's wrong? And then we tried to, is it position? What is it? And it's just devices aren't calibratable. So coming up with that standard deviation to let you know when you get this new device, it's not just one, it's, let's take 10 or 20 of them. Yes. And of those, if you did all 100, great, but you need at least a test pool to get some statistics off of that to know where that offset should be. Because do you offset against the strongest one or the weakest one?
Right, exactly. Well, if you
go the weakest one, you're going to really over-engineer your Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So a great point that you make, and I've seen the same thing. For example, we've looked at some vital signs devices that have, they're unfortunately in the hospital, ABG only cards in them. And I got a call that said, hey, the Wi-Fi sucks. Can you come look at it? And so we went up there and took a look at it.
Yeah, we love those calls because it has so much detailed information in it.
Yeah, and I said, what have you tried so far? And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, they say, hey, we've got one vital signs device sitting here that has 1 bar, and right next to it, there's one that has 5 bars. And so your Wi-Fi must be broken. And so anyway, I went up to the hospital and we took these vital signs devices around from room to room and compared one device to about 3 different others, and every one was fairly close. I mean, they were, within what I would feel like is a normal range of variance, like maybe 3 to 5 dB difference. But then we decided to go up to a different floor because we weren't able to reproduce the problem. And lo and behold, after about the 6th device that we compared, we found we found 2 vital signs devices that were 13 dB apart. So
yeah, it's just 20x. That's all.
Yeah. So same model, same manufacturer, same card, same location, same everything, 13 dB difference consistently. And I said, look to the biomed guy and I said, can we swap that card out? Can we trade them? And they couldn't do it right then, but they went through the process, and sure enough, they pulled the card out, put another one in, and they were, 3 to 5 dB within range of all the others. So the moral of the story is they have a process now where they check the devices when they bring them up. And if they find one that is 10 to 13 dB off, they send it back to the manufacturer.
And they don't call you.
Exactly. Yeah. So
you show them the process and let them do it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't think that our efforts will be perfect, but we do intend to take a couple, maybe 2, maybe 3. If we get one that's, 10 or 15 dB off, we figure we might throw it out and try 2 that are closer to each other. But we intend to get a couple of each device, of each of these devices, measure them, and I'm working with our architecture people. So once we have this in place, the other thing we can do is kind of incorporate an architectural standard for purchasing devices, where, for example, it's fine. I mean, like you said at the beginning, they buy them first and then we have to make them work. Well, we would like to get to the point where they buy them, we test them, then we tell them
it's okay to buy more.
If the new device that you just got is now the least capable device on our network, you're welcome to put it on. You'll just have to pay for the redesign.
That's it. Just get some responsibility back there of who's going to pay for that. Because they don't necessarily know when they're buying them. I've worked with a couple of hospitals where they have I call them the Wi-Fi czar, where anything that's going to go on the network, they have to buy one because you're normally going to do a beta test or a trial or a proof of concept. And during that first proof of concept, they run these tests and come back and say, okay, we ran the test. This is what you got. We either want you to or not. But I like your edition where you say, and you'll have to pay for the differential.
Yeah. So you have a choice to make now. I look for a different device that is not the least capable device, or we fund the difference in the infrastructure to make up for the new least capable device.
Yeah, if it's ever, it's kind of like finding a bottleneck. Once you find it, it just moves. So you're always going to have a least capable device. It's just you don't want to have a new one that's even less capable.
Yeah, I mean, we expect devices over time to gravitate toward the bottom percentile of least capable device.
Oh, I mean, just because they're old.
Because they age out, right? The problem that we're trying to avoid is the devices that are being purchased that are brand new that instantly become the least capable device because we know we'll have those for 5 or 10 years longer.
Yeah.
And then they'll have all sorts of problems.
Well, if you can get in front of purchasing, that helps a lot.
Yeah, so our goal is to work with architecture and see if we can come up with a standard there when devices are purchased and inform people that, hey, this is what the network will look like from your device's perspective. And if it's the worst one, maybe you ought to consider another.
Yeah, you might consider setting up a single AP with, maybe tape on the wall or wherever you're going to be doing these tests and just leave it up all the time. That any device that comes in, take it here, run the tests, collect the data.
That's exactly the idea. Yeah, but so we're trying to use that same collection process that Blake Croney has on his website, which is, a device that's like 1 meter off the ground, and then you step back 3 meters, then 6 meters, then 9 meters. We do those with a couple of the like devices, and then that way, when we're done with all this testing, not only is it our personal library, but we can upload it to the website and crowdsource the thing.
Sharing it with others is a great thing. Which is the more you collect, the better the statistics. So if you only have like 2 or 3 and they're 5 dB apart, that's one thing. If you have 20 and they consistently within 5 dB, that's a lot stronger statistics to go with.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just not sure that we'll be able to get that quantity.
It just takes time. That's when you need to get minions. Get some minions over the summer.
I do have some student help from the architecture team on this, actually. So we're hoping that we'll be able to collect a lot of data, and that will make our designs better forever, and maybe even our purchasing decisions and architecture decisions.
Sounds great. I look forward to seeing more contributions up to RSSIcompared.com. It's not a perfect, if we had a perfect world, we would have some lab someplace with a Faraday cage around it and precise markings where to put them. But since it is crowdsourced, at least everyone can be consistent. And over time, when we get to 10, 100, 200 devices per category, the averages will start to be, very statistically significant.
That's what I'm hoping for too. I love the site. Want to be able to contribute more. So I think it's a great resource. There's others like that, clients.michaelbono.com. It's been a great resource and things like that. So
that's great. Well, thanks, Curtis, for your time and hearing about your comparing RSSI and building a database. It's a great idea, and I applaud your efforts.
Thank you, Keith. Good to talk to you.
Thanks.
Mentor Minute.
So, Keith, one of the things we've been doing on the website is asking people what are the struggles that they're facing as wireless LAN professionals. We have questions coming into the website and through Twitter. Here's one that came in, or a variation that we've seen this come in different ways. But what's the best way to approach a customer when a previous installation or deployment was really poorly done? And you don't want to throw the previous guy under the bus, but it is his fault. And you don't want to look like you're blaming, but you do have to put blame somewhere. How do you handle that situation? Has this come up a lot for you?
Yes, quite often. Sometimes, and the most difficult one is when the person who actually is hiring you to come fix it is the person who made the mistakes. So you have to be very sensitive about who you are going to end up throwing under the bus. And I don't think you have to blame anyone. That's not really a positive thing, to blame someone as an excuse. If they ask, how did we get here? You might walk through the process. You probably did this, and they said this, and kind of there's a flow. A lot of times when I'm on site, I can almost within a month's accuracy come back and say, well, in January, you guys did this. In February, this happened. You first bought these APs, and then you added some more APs, and then you added a third set of APs, and you never fixed the first ones. From the data we collect, either by surveys or packet analysis, it's sometimes really obvious how they got to where they are. I think placing blame is not helpful. What is helpful is saying, okay, here's where we are now. Here's where you want to be. These are your set of requirements we'd like to hit. And what's the differential? What's the delta from where you are now to where you need to be? And I think we can keep it in a positive light without actually placing blame. Thus, if the person who actually caused it is the person hiring you, you don't make them feel bad.
Yeah.
You just give them a place to go. So I think it's the looking forward rather than back is the best answer.
And I guess maybe another way to look at it would be is if you're walking into a really dysfunctional situation, maybe it's not where blame is being flown around and you're trying to protect yourself. It may not be the healthiest job to take, possibly.
Well, sometimes when they act, at times they'll flat out say, whose fault is this?
Yeah.
Heads will roll. And you're like, well, the decisions that were made usually were probably higher up. Maybe even the person who's saying heads will roll didn't train their people properly, or give them enough tools to make the right decisions, or listen to the sales guy who took them to a golf trip. So there's sometimes way more going on politically than you can see with just the simple question.
Very cool. Well, and again, thanks for answering that. And of course, guys, if you have more questions, submit them via Twitter or online, wlanpros.com. We are going to try to answer your questions you have that you're facing as wireless LAN professionals. Thanks, Keith.
10 Talks.
Welcome, everybody, and I'm glad that Keith squeezed me in for a little 10 Talk. I first start a little bit introducing myself, because doing this 10 Talk was also from the community, asked me to join and make some efforts to the community. So I'm actually I'm more a generalist than Wi-Fi specialist, although I'm becoming more and more Wi-Fi specialist. So I tend to, if I look at the very old days, I try to make two computers talk to each other. And from there on, with modems, from there on, building a network. And from there on, I, luckily, living in the Netherlands, it was Larsen Technologies, nearby Utrecht, that they started with data over the air. And everybody said, that will never happen. Look where we are now. So, for a little nostalgia, I know it's vendor neutral, but I thought Larsen Technologies and Wi-Fi. So I brought the old Wi-Fi with me. So if anybody wants to have a look, this is actually one of my first Wi-Fi things. So it's typically one from the old days, a PC card that you, for PCMCIA, that you put in your laptop with an external antenna module that you could stick on the back of your laptop. And if you want to rip it off, half your display is defect. And if that didn't work, you had something like an extender that you put near your laptop. I don't know if you all remember that, but that's the old days. So, and I read the book. It was July 97. So it's almost 20 years ago that I'm kind of playing with Wi-Fi. Never worked for a Wi-Fi vendor, but always for a data networking company doing Wi-Fi on the side. So doing that, now working 4.5 years for Extreme Networks, was diode switching and doing Wi-Fi more and more. 3 years ago, I think I started here in Maastricht for this conference, and we had a big discussion at the bar about certifications. And well, was it a discussion? It was like, where does it go and how should we do it? And I took that very seriously. So I went to Peter Mackenzie and did my CWNA training, certified. At the moment I'm a security professional, and yeah, I don't know where to stop, so let's continue with that. CWNE, probably.
You never stop.
You never stop, yeah. See where it started and we still go on. So, in being in the business, you see an immense gain of data, data explosion, I would say. And things like 3D printing, things like Internet of Things. I think we all heard about it, and they tend to say it's like 1.7 billion of data will be generated by 2020 or so. So that's more data than is ever produced in the last 20 years, or in human race even. So, but it's very important to analyze the data and to know what we're talking about. That's why we talk so much about the analyzing tools and everything around it. So we need insights and not opinions. And we really want to know what's going on in the network. This is we very much, if I talk to customers, I always tend to talk about the user experience. If you go to school, how does the student use the network, and not how we as installers try to make the network work. At the moment, I'm busy at a school in the Netherlands, like a college. It's like ages 12 to 18, I would say. All different, like the IQ 60 till IQ 160. So you have the users and the hackers, I would say. And that's very interesting, certainly with Wi-Fi. So you come across things like, okay, Wi-Fi is perfect. The Apple standardized on Apple, so perfect challenge. So what typically happened was, as long as they had classes, everything was peaceful, nice, quiet. We had a channel plan, we had installed everything. And then the buzzer came, and the students started to walk. Now they have an access point in every classroom, so they immediately passes all the access points with their tablets, phones. So average, I think, 2 to 4 devices. Then network starts to behave crazy. Literally, you see all kinds of things happen. So we debugged it, analyzed it, went into the packets, and then we noticed that fast transition, something simple like that, was turned off. What does it do? It does authenticate once and take the authentication with it when you roam. So, and that was intentionally also our meaning, right? So when we start debugging, you see all students constantly authenticate roaming, authenticate roaming, authenticate roaming, and then with about 2,500 students at one time. So, well, you learn a lot just being in the field, dial troubleshooting, and so that's how you gain your knowledge. Another thing, what we typically do is large venues. I think all vendors are busy with dealing with large venues. So this we have the NFL, for example, and one thing certainly is we came in with the NFL via the analytics, not via the Wi-Fi. We first introduced the analytics software, and we noticed how the network was behaving, and therefore the next step was, oh, do you also have products to make the Wi-Fi? And that's how we were introduced. Typically, it's like 3 dimensions of the analytics software. A packet will, let's say in the back end, we have all kind of service applications like DNS, DHCP, LDAP, Radius. You provide the services towards the client. On the front end, we typically have the RF spectrum, and we have to make sure we have a complete Wi-Fi network. In the middle is actually what we think is most important. All our access points are flow-based. All access points in nature are packet-based. Packet flows through the access point, but we listen to the first packet and try to determine what kind of flow it is. So we know if it's Facebook or Twitter or what kind of app is running through the network. Based on that, we can decide what are the network response times and the application response time. And network response time typically is when a packet comes out the interface of a device through the network. The application response time is actually when the response comes on the request. So what is the time for the whole flow? So that's how we can say, is it becoming to is the failure happening in the network, or is the failure happening at application level? That's why we say, well, networks become more and more cognitive, start to become smarter based on apps and flows. We know how the network behaves and what happens. So it's learning, monitoring, and going better. So I have to go very fast now. It's more or less a conclusion, and we think analytics drives the business needs. knowing what happens in the network, knowing what trends go through the network, you know how to optimize the network far better. So I end it here, and hopefully I can contribute more to the community with knowledge, help, whatever.
And a little history lesson too.
A bit, yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Wireless LAN Professionals Podcast, the podcast for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wireless LAN Pros for all the latest news and updates, and also connect directly with Keith on Twitter at Keith R. Parsons. Head over to www.wlanpros.com for this episode's show notes, as well as the latest in all things Wi-Fi.